All right, guys, it's Friday, October 10th, 2025. I'm Dave Rubin. This is the Rubin Report, and it's time for another Friday Roundtable extravaganza. Joining me today are the host of the Young Heretics show, Spencer Klavan, and co-founder of We the Free TV and CNN contributor, Shermichael Singleton. Gentlemen, welcome back to the show.
It's great to be
back.
Good
to see you, Dave.
Shermichael, I must start with you here because you are a CNN contributor and this is your second appearance on the Rubin Report. Did you get smacked or hit or belittled or bullied in the hallways after appearing on the Rubin Report before?
You know what? A lot of people saw the clips and they asked what you were like. And I mean, obviously, I said, look, I'm biased. I've been a fan for years. But I didn't get any negative feedback. People thought it was a great conversation. And yeah, everybody was like, kudos for you. The right people are recognizing you. So clearly, Dave, they hold you in very high regard.
High regard. They just won't let me in the building. On the other hand, Spencer, Daily Wire, they let me wander in every now and again. They give me that fancy iced coffee they have over there. It's a very
that just shows
experience.
The degree to which standards have lapsed in the time that the company's been running its programming, Dave. I have to have words with them next time I'm in, clearly.
Fair enough. All right. Well, it's good to have both of you back, and let's dive in. Obviously, everyone knows where we're starting this week. The big story, of course, is that we are on the precipice, at least, of what could be the beginnings of something like, how many adjectives did I use there? Peace in the Middle East. At least the hostages will be out. At least the fighting will temporarily stop. We'll see about all the rest of it. But I want to start, actually, with a clip from CNN and Abby Phillip, and Shermichael used to do the show all the time. She had Dan Goldman on, a congressman from Connecticut, I think, right? And
New York.
From New York, sorry. And she asked what I thought was actually a fair question about why this didn't happen under Biden, meaning any sort of peace deal. And I thought Goldman's response was rather ridiculous, but you can decide for yourself. Take a look.
That this was not doable when President Biden was in office.
I think the biggest problem that the President Biden had is there was no pressure from Qatar, from Turkey, from Egypt. They were actually facilitating in many ways what was going on. And that is really ultimately how it all came together.
So, I mean, but I think by saying that, it's sort of an acknowledgement Trump has changed that dynamic.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think
absolutely. That, I mean, he's clearly
I don't know how he,
changed
and I think there's a lot that remains to learn about what prompted that change, but I do agree, yes. So, somehow, some way that changed.
I always tell people I love seeing my guests' reactions to the clip when they're not on camera. So Shermichael, since you have probably sat in that very chair many times, and I've been pretty critical of Abby, but I thought it was a good question, and it was a good follow-up. And Dan there, does he not realize where the pressure came from that got those guys to change?
I mean, Dave, he couldn't even, this is the part of a bigger conundrum with Democrats in general. He couldn't even acknowledge what President Trump is doing. He just couldn't. Everything that Trump is doing good, Democrats just automatically have to be on the negative. It's bad. It's the worst thing in the world. He couldn't acknowledge it. He couldn't acknowledge the fact that the president, who he supported and voted for and campaigned for in New York, couldn't get the deal across the finish line. He also wouldn't acknowledge that many of the Arab countries surrounding that area refused any of the Palestinians. They didn't want them there. And for decades, even Bill Clinton, just a quick example, even Bill Clinton, when he was campaigning for Kamala Harris last year, stated, I tried to broker peace between Israel and the Palestinians. You know what? It wasn't Israel who didn't want it. It was the Palestinians. And that speaks volumes about the Democratic Party. And it speaks volumes about why so many of their voters, particularly younger ones, are anti-Zionist, anti-Semitic, and I would even argue pro-Hamas.
I would also argue largely anti-American. But Spencer, the notion of peace through strength, why is it that these guys don't seem to understand that? Like Biden, look, to blame Biden, we just don't even know that Biden was in charge. Was it all the auto pen? Was it Kamala? Was it anyone else in that office? Nobody freaking knows. But we do know we had a weak America one way or another for 4 years. So all of America's enemies, and thus Israel's enemies, were kind of like, yeah, we're never going to give in. Trump comes in, and this is less than a year since he's been in office again.
I don't even know, Dave, if it's a principled objection to peace through strength or just the fact that the whole center of gravity for the Democrat Party seems to have become Trump bad. I mean, watching that clip is like watching a live root canal without anesthesia. You're looking at somebody having a concession wrung like out from his esophagus, kind of bit by bit, and fighting the whole way. And there is no good reason why this is happening now and not 2 years ago, except for Trump. This is something that even moderate, sensible Democrats who aren't in media are able to concede. I was just actually hanging out with some friends that are reasonable. They're far to the left of me, but they're, if you can imagine, not insane. And they themselves said to me, you know, the Abraham Accords were my favorite thing that Trump did last time. This is the thing that is as easily and obviously a win for him as anything else. And I think there are a lot of areas, not just this one, in which professional Democrats, politicians, and the media just find it impossible because they've set themselves up now that if you say anything good about Trump, you're basically saying something good about Hitler. And that's an impossible situation.
Right. So I think the next obvious question is this all because they're in a hostage situation with their own base? And to that point, I want to show you this video. We played it twice this week, but I did want to show it again today because I think it really shows the radicalism. And it also highlights the fact that seemingly nobody is in charge of this clown car. This was outside of the Fox building on 6th Avenue in New York City on the second anniversary of October 7th. And listen to this.
We did not act enough. We did not act enough. We did not act enough. Repeat after me. We did not act enough. We did not act enough. If we acted enough. If we acted enough. The headline behind me would read. The headline behind me would read. Gaza has been liberated. So our work is not done. We must show up. We must show up. Stronger than we did the first October 7th. Louder than we did the first October 7th.
I mean, Shermichael, we did not act enough. We got to be stronger than the first October 7th. He repeatedly says we. There were literal Hamas flags there, not just Palestinian flags. But I think this illustrates the point. Someone like Goldman is now afraid of his own base. And they don't know what to do with these guys. It should be noted that guy also turns out, the guy that was just screaming right there leading the clone army, he is a Harvard student. Surprise, surprise.
No surprise there. Look, it's not surprising. And again, I'm going to go back to the end of last year. We saw Kamala Harris had to make a choice, I guess perhaps even a binary one, between who she would choose to be her running mate. Now, as a political strategist, I've worked on a number of campaigns, even worked for President Trump in the first administration. And she had an option of choosing someone, that being the governor of Pennsylvania, who I argued would have been a much more formidable candidate for her to select. It would have made the race even more competitive, I would argue. Although I think President Trump and Vice President Vance would have still won, it would have just been a fascinating race to watch for people like me who enjoy analyzing this. But she did not, Dave. And she did not choose him because he's Jewish. She chose an idiot, a dopey person like Governor Walz, who doesn't even belong anywhere near any executive seat. And she didn't choose him because she was afraid that they would lose a significant percent of younger voters at the base of the Democratic Party. And to tell you the truth, I think she was right. There is a heightened level of anti-Semitism within the Democratic Party. And you saw this around college campuses across the country. Last year, I did a focus group, several of them, with Jewish students across the U.S., all the way from Louisiana, Florida, New York, Virginia, where I live. And some of these students, Dave, were not conservatives. Many of them were Democrats. And when you listened to their fears, their concerns about being on college campuses, how many of their college professors admonished them for their pro-Jewishness. And there was no one within the administration, none of their peers came to their aid, because we're seeing this fermenting of this ugliness that's rising among the ideological left that no one on that side appears to be strong enough to stand against. It worries me. It concerns me. And quickly, I'll say this. There was some polling data that came out from Pew Research a year ago, and it suggested that Gen Z, many of them have no historical idea of the Holocaust. So it does not surprise me that you're seeing these winds trend in a very dark and ugly direction.
Cryptocurrency isn't just the future, it's already reshaping the world of finance. And one of the leading companies in that transformation is Crypto.com, the trusted platform used by millions around the globe. Recently, Crypto.com partnered with Trump Media and Yorkville Acquisition Corporation in a major $6.4 billion initiative built around CRO, Crypto.com's native token. CRO powers fast, low-fee, decentralized finance, stalking rewards, and real-world benefits like cash back on everyday spending. This collaboration underscores how far digital assets have come and how platforms like Crypto.com are helping bring cryptocurrency into the mainstream economy. To learn more about Crypto.com and explore the future of digital finance, visit Crypto.com today. Spencer, I think you're my youngest friend. How old are you?
I'm 34. Does that?
You're 34. You're
yeah.
Shermichael, how old are you?
35.
There
Look,
you
he's
go.
a kid.
I got you beat by 1 year.
1 year, Spencer.
But I'm catching up. I'm working hard to catch up.
Well, as the youngster on this panel here, what is the way out? If Shermichael's assessment there is correct, which I think it is, about what's going on with young people, and we know this from TikTok and all the other stuff. If that is basically correct, and we're losing a generation and all of the gender confusion and all, and they think that, socialism's better than capitalism, all of the stuff, not just Middle East. Do you see any off-ramp of that for young people, or is it just hopefully as they get older, they will kind of wake up as we all do?
Yeah, well, speaking as a callow youth, I would say the most important word, Dave, in everything that we've said so far, the most important word is Harvard. And obviously, it's no surprise at this point to any of us here that this would be the product of an Ivy League university. But it's not something that we should lose sight of, that these are young people who have taken their professors seriously. And I teach college courses, and I have some experience with, undergraduates. And one thing that's true about undergraduates that's actually quite admirable in itself, it's a good quality. They expect words to mean things. When you tell them something, you have to be ready for that to come back at you and for them to hold you accountable to the meaning of your words. Now, the people who teach college courses don't expect words to mean things. In fact, that's their entire profession, is writing meaningless academic gunk prose to publish and get tenure and do all of these things, that they're in this weird competition to be as radical as possible without ever having to face accountability for their words. And what we're seeing now is that after generations of that, you have a class of young people that's coming up who have taken these extreme statements and these crazy ideas, not just about Israel, by the way, but about any manner of things. There is no true or false, there's no good or bad. And they've really followed through on that. And they actually think that this is serious, and they mean to take it seriously. The only route out of this is education. And some of it, I think, is going to have to come from new ventures like the University of Austin, Texas, or some of it's going to have to come from recapturing, retaking the institutions. But yeah, you're really looking at the effects of indoctrination with this, and the people who thought they could just mouth off flippantly about these things without ever having those chickens come home to roost should be deeply, deeply ashamed of themselves.
Let me ask you guys one other question on this, because I know we all feel the same way about free speech, and we want to defend free speech and the First Amendment as much as possible. When you hear something like that, what that guy just said, talking about how it should be stronger and louder and all of those things, again, with the backdrop of a terrorist flag right there, according to the United States government, what do you think the role of the government should be in a situation like that?
Look, I'll say something that's a little unpopular. Like, I think freedom of speech is important, but the Supreme Court has already ruled if freedom of speech leads to violence, that's problematic. And so I guess I beg perhaps a moral question here. Should we permit speech that foments a type of ideology that's antithetical to our values as a society? Now, I would argue no. I would argue that it's very dangerous to allow speech. And I know people can say, well, you can just make debates on the other side to convince people. Well, what happens when some are beyond the pale of convincing? And that's a question that I wrestle with, Dave. Again, I think freedom of speech is important, but I think the government has an obligation to not allow speech that is detrimental to our way of life to exist. I just think it's problematic.
Well, that's why I asked the question, because to me, they're using our language and our freedoms against us as closely as possible. I don't think that is protected free speech. From what I understand, this guy is now under investigation, I think. So we'll see. But Spencer, where do you fall on that? Because the other part of this, of course, is that they chose right outside the Fox building. And it is fairly obvious to me these people have a track record. If they could have busted through the barricade there and got into the building and scared the hell out of some of the people that work there and everything else, they gladly would have done that. Now, I get that that's action, but what do you think on the speech part specifically pertaining to what he said?
Well, these are delicate issues, and obviously we're all aware that we're kind of dealing here with edge cases and trying to find the right place to draw the line. But I would say, first and foremost, that there's kind of a lot of low-hanging fruit here. And one thing that you've both said is that it's not as if we need to write new laws. Our current laws that draw these lines are already on the books. We need to enforce them. And that's very different. And not only that, but these universities that receive so much public funding. I mean, one of the best things Trump has done, because it's so straightforward, is he's required that public funds should go to institutions that support the public interest. And he's done that without actually cabining anybody's free speech. Of course, the reaction to that has been to try to make it about a violation of the Constitution. But really, there are many, many situations that are helping to produce this disaster that aren't actually you can deal with without violating our constitutional rights at all. And I think before you even start to have these edge case conversations, you should just push as far as possible in that direction.
So let me just to really pin you on this, I'm really curious. So yes or no, do you think what he said there was constitutionally protected free speech?
Oh boy. I think it probably was. I mean, I'm not a constitutional expert, but I do think that there are things that you have to be allowed to say if we're serious about free speech, and one of them is abhorrent or even let's say prejudicial racist thing. I mean, you have to be able to say those things. I guess that the line is that he's not calling for any particular person or specific group of people to be attacked. I mean, it's
right. We're going to find out, because if he is under investigation, I think this is where there's a legal component and everything else. Let me jump to one other thing on this while we still have time, because we've all sort of mentioned that the Democrats have kind of lost it here and that nobody's, running the show anymore, or at least nobody that's moderate. They do have one guy. A year and a half ago, he had brain damage, and now he's the sanest guy in the party, John Fetterman.
President Trump has a very strong commitment to Israel, and that's why I celebrate and support most of the things that they've done, including the Iranian nuclear sites. I believe I might have been the only Democrat that supported them through it. So now today, I think it's entirely appropriate to celebrate this. Thank God this terrible war is going to end, and these poor souls kept underground for over 2 years can come back home. So I don't understand why anyone's reaction would be other than that.
Do you think the president deserves a Nobel Peace Prize?
Well, I mean, if this sticks, I think the whole point of having a Nobel Peace Prize is for ending wars and promoting peace. And now I'm going to make a direct appeal to the president.
Shermichael, is the crazy part here that all he's doing is saying like the most obvious, basic stuff, and it is so out of whack with his party that he will likely be a Republican by 28. That's my guess.
Yeah, like some Democrats already want him out of there, and Democrats in Pennsylvania have threatened to fund other candidates to contest his seat. So we'll see what happens there. Like, I think the senator is correct, though. When you really think about the importance and the magnitude of this moment, if President Trump did not bring peace, bring both sides together for some type of a resolution, you could have destabilized the entire region. And that's something that no one would have wanted. It would have had significant implications for U.S. interest across that part of the world. We have thousands of U.S. troops stationed, that some are still in Iraq, believe it or not. Many Americans may not be aware of that. And so it was really essential for the United States interest to bring a resolution to it. It was also essential for our Arab allies that we do have in that part of the world as well. And so why not applaud this, Dave Spencer? I don't see this as a partisan thing. And in terms of the president being honored with a Nobel Peace Prize, I wouldn't be opposed to that, because let's say a resolution did not come, you would have seen thousands of people losing their lives, innocent women, children, etc. No one would have wanted that. They have given out Nobel Peace Prizes to people for less reasons. I darn surely believe this is a legitimate.
Well, that's the funny thing, Spencer, about the Nobel Prize. To me, it's sort of like the New York Times bestseller list. It's like everyone knows it's kind of fraudulent at this point. You just got to know the right guy. Like, it's basically, that's how it works. They gave it to Obama before he was president.
They did give it to Obama, didn't they?
Literally before he was president. I mean, he had done nothing. Right. So I get, that's the ego portion of Trump. He wants it. And of course, in a certain sense, he deserves it. But that's sort of a throwaway here, right?
I find this so touching about Donald Trump, to be honest. This is the thing about Trump that maybe moves my heartstrings most of all, is that he does want the Nobel Peace Prize. I don't want the Nobel Peace Prize. Not that anybody, please. I know they're calling me up. They're trying to give it to me. I'm not even taking it. I thank you, Shermichael. I like to think that I'm a peacemaker. But no, you and I and Shermichael, we don't care really about these institutions anymore. Trump was a darling of these cosmopolitans for so long. Yeah. And I actually think, if I'm reading him right, that it hurts him to now be hated. And what's really moving to me about that is that it's actually more impressive that he feels the pain of being hated, and yet nevertheless does what he thinks needs to be done. And in this case, he's done something, if it turns out to be what it looks like, he's done something genuinely triumphant, a real gift to the world. I would pay good money. I would shave years off my life to be a fly on the wall in the Nobel Peace Committee.
Right. And it also seems like when he's like 90 years old and he's sitting with with the biographer, and they're asking about things, if he gets it, that's what he'll remember, right? He won't really remember that there have been 30 years of peace and all that, but I got that award and there it is. It's right over there. You want to see it? And you
100%
signed it and all that. All right, let's talk about Blue Chew for a second, and then we will get to the government. The government is shut down. It has not affected me in any way whatsoever, but apparently it's shut down. We'll get to that in a second. Blue Chew is basically the upgrade button for your sex life. These chewable tablets are designed to deliver stronger, harder, and longer-lasting erections without the hoops. No waiting rooms, no pharmacy lines, and no awkward doctor visits. Just a quick online consultation, and once you're approved by a licensed medical professional, Blue Chew sends your tablets straight to your door in discreet packaging. Blue Chew's tablets are made in the USA and prepared and shipped directly to you. The best part, it's all done online. That means no hassle, no embarrassment, just a smarter, simpler way to handle things. Great sex is just a few clicks away. Sign up at BlueChew.com and make life easier by getting harder. Discover your options today at BlueChew.com. Simple as that. And we've got a special offer for our listeners. Try the first month of Blue Chew free when you use promo code Rubin and just pay $5 shipping. That's promo code Rubin. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. So yes, the government has been shut down. Don't threaten me with a good time. Here's Nancy Pelosi being asked by Nicole Wallace about the shutdown and why they're doing it, why they can't pass a clean bill. And I don't know if it's the vodka, but she's a little confused.
I understand what you're saying about where the differences are, and they are very big. They are voting yes on what we say here in Washington, a clean CR, a bill to keep the government running for 7 weeks, and Democrats are voting no, and for the reasons you just said. So how are they shutting down the government?
First of all, it isn't a clean CR.
Okay.
So let's not stipulate to that. It's not a clean CR.
What do they have in it?
It's going into that. The point is,
first off, everyone watching this knows I'm not above a correction. That was obviously Dana Bash, not Nicole Wallace. Joseph is not getting lunch today. Shermichael, you were shaking your head during that. Nancy seems a little confused as to what's going on here.
No, because she's lying. It is a clean CR. Even the New York Times wrote an article, I think a week ago, saying that this is a clean CR, which doesn't always happen on either side, to be quite honest with you. Typically, the party in power tries to ease in a little bit of something for whatever issue they particularly care about. Now, this is a problem, Dave and Spencer. Let's be honest here. We are not supposed to run our country by passing CRs, which are supposed to be temporary. Mm-hmm. They're supposed to pass 12 consecutive budgets throughout the year to fund education, the military, et cetera. But we haven't done that because neither frickin' side can agree on passing a darn budget. And so in order to make this thing operate and function the way it should be, the 300+ million people in this country who rely on a functioning federal government, you got to pass CCR. So I'm not a big fan of it, but it is what it is. But to pretend that this is on Republicans is absurd. In 2019, when President Biden was in office, we were in a very similar scenario. And if you guys recall at the time, it was Hakeem Jeffries, still the minority leader then, saying it's abhorrent what Republicans do. They don't care about struggling families. They don't care about our veterans. It's all on Republicans. Now the roles are reversed, and they're still trying to blame Republicans. Somebody help me out with this logic here.
I think you get the logic. It's just not very logical.
Yeah, exactly.
Spencer, I want to throw to this clip of, so this is Bernie Sanders, and you can sense he's talking about how the Democrats might lose some leverage here. But I think there's a certain sense of desperation seeping in with them, like they overplayed their hand here, or that more people were going to be like, oh my God, the government's shut down. We need them. And I think people are just kind of like, I don't know, trains are running.
Robert Costa of CBS News said tonight that Senator Susan Collins was circulating some bipartisan plan about extending the subsidies and addressing that once the government is reopened.
Of course, once the government is reopened.
You don't seem to think that's enough.
Kaitlan, they have had months to negotiate. And you reopen the government, and we lose our leverage, and they say, well, you know, we want this, we want that. No, there has to be an agreement right now. That's what this whole shutdown is about, to protect the American people and our healthcare system from collapsing.
Spencer, it seems like a real overplay of his hand right there, because I don't think anyone really cares. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I didn't know that you were showing clips from He-Man. Is that where the Crypt Keeper comes from? I'm speaking a little bit off the cuff here because this program is the first I'm hearing about the government shutdown. I'm literally just learning about this right now.
What do you do for a living?
And you know what? I'm already bored. No, I actually did vaguely know precisely. Yeah, because it's my job. I knew that this was going on. I think that what Shermichael said is really important. I want to go back to this for a second. You pointed out that our Congress is consummately feckless. They have not a single feck. And when people ask me what worries me about the health of our republic, it's this. Whenever somebody says, oh, Donald Trump has taken the law into his own hands, he's overstepping his boundaries, et cetera, 1% of the time, I'm vaguely concerned about that. 99% of the time, the answer is this is a problem that Congress has declined to solve, and the budget is the kind of ultimate example of that. I think that this is another area, though, where the Democrats are very much in hock to their radical base. I mean, we've talked before about this on Israel-Palestine, that the crazies are kind of running the show. Here, it's even worse, I think, because they've all committed to the Trump is Hitler proposition, right? At some point, maybe in 2020 or thereabouts, they said, anyone who disagrees with us about this even a little bit or collaborates with this regime even slightly is a villain. So how can they sign a CR? How can they do anything without committing themselves by their own words to kind of consummate evil? I think it's a real problem for them. But the bigger problem is Congress.
And you can really see the fight happening here, because clearly Schumer and AOC are on the other side. You know, he's obviously in the Senate and she's in the House, but they're clearly on other sides of this thing. And it's really taken its toll on Schumer, who's getting hit every which way. Here's Trump on Schumer.
Chuck Schumer proclaimed this morning that every day gets better for them. No, every day it's actually getting worse for them. And they're having a rebellion in the Democrat Party because they want to stop. And if you saw all of Schumer's, I watched last night like 10 different times over the years, he said, you can't shut down government, you can't shut down. And now he's the one that shut it down. So this is a confession that he's acting not to serve the people, but to serve the partisan interests of his party. And I don't think he's serving them well.
Yeah, I mean, Shermichael, does this just again get to that Schumer really has lost control? I don't think in his heart of hearts he's one of like the craziest radicals, although he often bends over backwards for them. But I think he's just now kind of old and lost and nobody's listening, and AOC would gladly take him out if she had the chance.
Yeah, I think she wants to take him out, and I wouldn't be surprised if she decides to run against him for that Senate seat. And looking at Mom Donnie's race, depending on what the margins are, she could potentially beat Schumer. She'll have some problems in the more rural parts of the state, but that doesn't mean she can't get enough votes to potentially be elected to the Senate. I agree with what Spencer was saying, though, overall. I agree with you, Dave. I think that Schumer probably wants to agree on this, right? I think he wants to figure out how they can negotiate. President Trump, Majority Leader Thune, Speaker Mike Johnson have all signaled that they're willing to negotiate on subsidies as it pertains to the American people.
But he got burned for this last time, to your point. Yeah.
He did, Spencer. Yeah. The problem here, though, however, is the emergency Medicaid spending that goes to covering illegal immigrants. And for the audience, that's a combination of state and federal funds that are combined to reimburse hospitals for providing care to people illegally. Now, what I have argued is how about we redirect those emergency funds to Americans, particularly poor Americans, which I think many Republicans would agree with that. That's where the disagreement is. I think that Chuck Schumer would want to have that debate. But as Spencer said, you can't have that debate because when you've moved the goalpost so far to how horrible Trump is, how horrid the Republicans are, you can't work with those horrible people, right? No way you would agree to have a conversation with Adolf Hitler, the worst person known to man, so they can't. So they're stuck in an unrealistic place, Dave. So I don't know if we're going to be able to accomplish something here because, as Spencer said, Democrats have become beholden to the most extreme factions of their party.
To me, the bumper sticker on this thing is that the government has been closed for about a week now, and I just don't think anyone really cares. Like, I know I know it's like, I know something's happening, and I know the mail might be a little bit slower or something like that, but I don't think the average person knows or cares. The guys I played basketball with last night, nobody cares, and I don't think anyone's life has been affected. Let's talk about Perplexity AI for a second, and then we'll do more on those radicals running the show. Let me ask you something. How much time do you spend every day clicking around on your web browser? Searching, scrolling, typing, juggling endless tabs? It adds up fast, right? Well, there's a new AI-powered web browser from Perplexity called Comet, and it's completely changing the way we interact with the internet. Comet isn't just another browser. It's like having a personal assistant that lives inside your browser and actually does things for you online. You can ask Comet to handle tasks, and it literally clicks, types, searches, and scrolls just like you would to get things done in the background while you go about your day. Comet can shop for you, make reservations, book flights or hotels, summarize articles or videos, send emails, schedule meetings, pay bills, find promo codes, even unsubscribe you from spam. I tried it myself, and watching Comet actually do things in real time is wild. It's like seeing the future of web browsing unfold right on your screen. You can even check out the demo to see Comet in action. So if you're ready to take back your time online, download Comet today at pplx.ai/Rubin. That's pplx.ai/Rubin. And when you download Comet right now, you'll get a free month of Rumble Premium. Try it today and let your browser finally work for you. All right, so let's jump over to Illinois because, as we know, Chicago, which has some of the strictest gun laws in the entire country, always has virtually every weekend. We checked it again for this past weekend. It was 5 killed, 25 shot in Chicago, virtually all young black men killed by other young black men, which is why the media can't cover it. Trump now sending in some of the feds and ICE to deal with the illegal situation and to clean up the streets. The average person in Chicago probably would like to go out to dinner and not get shot. J.B. Pritzker, governor of Illinois, clearly making a move for 28. He's trying to act the tough guy. Take a look.
You know as well as I do, the President of the United States in the last 24 hours called for you to be imprisoned. I want to give you an opportunity. We've seen your reaction on social media, but I want to hear what you have to say back to the President of the United States.
Well, let's start with the idea that this is a convicted felon. I mean, think about that, who is threatening to jail me. I got to say, this guy's unhinged. He's insecure. He's a wannabe dictator. And there's one thing I really want to say to Donald Trump. If you come for my people, you come through me. So come and get me.
Okay, tough guy. Let's put aside whether Trump said he should be jailed or not. Okay, that's just all like, that's just crumbs and whatever for everybody. But Shermichael, you're a big gun guy. Mm-hmm. You happen to be black. Can you explain to me using those?
What? I'm sorry, what do you
did you not notice that?
I don't see color, Shermichael.
You guys ever see Hear No Evil, See No Evil with Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder? I'm black. Why didn't you tell me? But anyway, they seem to not care. They tell you everything is about identity. And then Brandon Johnson, who also is black, the mayor of Chicago, does not seem to care when black people are being killed. And then Pritzker has the gall to be upset at Trump for trying to do something about it. I think this gets back to your Trump Nazi thing from before.
Yeah, no, look, I think it does. Example, when the president sent the National Guard to D.C., I live in Northern Virginia, about 12 minutes outside of the city. And at first, people were like, I don't want this. I'm worried about it. But then as they started to see the murder rates drop, 30 days, not a single murder in D.C., people in some of the more tougher, more impoverished areas of the city applauded the president. CNN even ran a clip, maybe a 6-minute clip of people saying, look, I don't agree with him on anything. But on this, I applaud the president for doing. I think it's really despicable that the governor of Illinois and the mayor, whose approval ratings have dropped, I believe, below 30% now, in part because of how he handled the illegal immigration crisis, but also the crime issue. The fact that they're not trying to do something to protect good, hardworking Black people who live in that state and in that city against other, unfortunately, young Black men who are committing horrendous acts against other Black people speaks volumes to me. We have appropriated additional funding to law enforcement. I'll even give a little bit of credit to the Biden administration. They tried to do that. It didn't work. If you guys recall, under Barack Obama, former president then had I believe it was called My Brother's Keepers, where other Black men would try to model what good masculinity looked like for troubled young Black men. It didn't work. So the point that I'm trying to make is, it's not because of a lack of benevolence as a society. We've tried a number of ways to address this issue, and it isn't working. And so to me, if to send the National Guard in, if just for 30 days, that visual show of force will lead to more lives being protected and saved, I'm in agreement for that. Now, the next step is you got to have something prolonged because we want that to last beyond 30 days. But again, why not support this? This stuff to me is so perplexing because I don't see this through a partisan lens. I think all three of us here want all Americans to be able to go to work and go to school and play outside without bullets flying all over their heads. But that's not the case in places like Illinois or in Southwest D.C.
Right. It's like I live in Florida, so it's 180 degree difference between what's going on here and there. But if if outside of my house people were getting shot left and right and the local police wasn't doing anything, and then I heard that the president was going to send in the feds to clean it up, pretty sure I'd be applauding. Yep. Of course, what they then do when Pritzker and Brandon Johnson fight this stuff is they hand the obvious wins to the administration. Here's Stephen Miller. It's just obvious.
What's the Pritzker record? What's the Mayor Johnson record? Bloodbath, suffering, death, misery. In just one weekend, you had over 70 people shot. 70 people shot in gun battles on the streets of Chicago. More dangerous than Mexico City, more dangerous than Baghdad, Iraq. And this is an American town. Donald Trump stands for peace. They stand for violence and death. It has to stop.
Well, Spencer, I guess Baghdad's looking pretty good these days, huh?
Yeah, well, I don't know, guys. These are some radical talking points that you're indulging in about not wanting to live in cities where people routinely get shot. That is apparently like a fascist point of view. And I do think, as you've both sort of indicated, this is the political genius of this whole line of attack that Trump is making, is that as often he's forcing Democrats to say out loud what they've already committed to in principle, which is that we don't think crime should be illegal. We think that that's hateful for crime to be illegal. I'm going to say for the second time on this show that I am not a legal expert. I do think there's a fight coming through the courts about the two different things that Trump is doing here. One of them seems pretty straightforward to me, and that is when you resist ICE, when the local or state government refuses to enforce the laws and to comply with the enforcement of the immigration laws, then you can send in federal troops. When you just are governing your state badly, and these guys are governing their state incredibly badly, I don't know if it's legal to send in troops for that reason. So I think he may have a court fight on his hands, but politically, as ever, he remains a genius. And I think he's probably in the end going to come out of this on top overall.
Well, you're actually giving me a perfect segue to the second part of that, which is because you're right. There's a difference between dealing with illegals through the federal government and what they can do with just about generalized criminality. Here's Kristi Noem on Erin Burnett on CNN, and they're talking about Antifa. And, well, take a look.
And Trump's Secretary of Homeland Security actually took that further. This network of Antifa is just as sophisticated as MS-13, as TDA, as ISIS, as Hezbollah, as Hamas, as all of them. They are just as dangerous.
That's pretty incredible, right? Hamas has just been engaged in a 2-year war that we just announced the first stage of a peace plan to a few moments ago. And ISIS? These are incredible things to say. And obviously, I'm not going to sit here and defend anybody who considers themselves part of an Antifa movement, such that it is. But such that it is the operative part of that sentence. Antifa is far from a major sophisticated terror organization like Hezbollah, Hamas, or ISIS. In fact, it's not even like far-right groups like the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, which have had national leaders, unlike Antifa. There is no organized hierarchy to the group, and according to the Center for Strategic and International Studies, compared to right-wing extremists, Antifa-linked violence is rare and limited.
Shermichael, I'm definitely going to get you smacked around in the hall this week because I got to do some criticism there. You can say whatever you want, but I mean the sleight of hand is rather extraordinary with her. Now, I'll grant that Antifa is probably not like Hezbollah in that they weren't sitting on like a stockpile of 100,000 rockets. I'll grant you that much. She then connects it to that the right wing and the Proud Boys and all that stuff. But why do they so consistently go out of their way to minimize not just the damage that Antifa is doing in places like Portland and Seattle, Portland, where they burned down the federal courthouse several times. Not only that, but then also pretend that there isn't a network there when we know at this point there is. That's what Kristi Noem, that's what the hearing was that she was at the White House for.
Well, look, I'll just bring up what former FBI Director Christopher Wray stated. And I know President Trump is not a big fan of Christopher Wray these days for transparency, but he said something I think is very poignant to this discussion. He said that Antifa was a problem, and that the FBI under his leadership was looking into the fact that they were spreading propaganda, that there appeared to be some type of an organized operational setting. Someone was funding the organization. Someone was funding the spread of said propaganda, particularly targeting our youth. And so I don't know if you can necessarily dismiss this because a lot of my friends on the left cited Christopher Wray when he made comments about crime being down nationally. But should we not all of a sudden not believe Christopher Wray on Antifa? I think there's something here, Dave, and I'm not opposed to the federal government looking into this. And just quickly here, I'll say I really believe that we're in an ideological sort of civil war in our country in terms of our customs of behavior, our values, and what does the United States of America look like in the next 25 to 30 years. And I think there are some people who radically view what this country should be. They don't like the Constitution. They don't like capitalism. They don't like anything that made this country great. And if those of us, even if you're not a conservative, maybe you're left-leaning, if you love and value all of those things, you absolutely must be opposed to this. And I think looking into Antifa is a place to start.
Right. Spencer, it does feel like low-hanging fruit. Like, just for the Democrats, just get out there and be like, you know what? These masked kids who keep breaking windows and burning down Pep Boys and Best Buy, they're probably not great people. Like, why can't they do that?
You don't understand, Dave. Antifa is an idea.
It's an idea.
It's just a principle. It's a thought it's a glimmer in the eye of AOC. I think that is what Joe Biden, if I'm remembering correctly, said in one of his debates, that this is just a kind of abstraction that people have invented, which means that we've already been over this. We've had this discussion. When that happened, there were many, many people. Kyle Scheidler is a good example of somebody who has really rigorously and meticulously tracked the way that these networks are, in fact, organized. What they are not is centralized. That's what I think the lady you played was sort of gesturing toward, that they don't have a head, but they're very much, there are best practices, there are plans in place, there's absolutely organization. And as Shermichael said, in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination, I think we were all called upon to decide, left, right, whatever, do you want to live in that kind of country or not, right? Anybody who looked at that and said, absolutely not, is, as far as I'm concerned, my American brother or sister. And if you can't condemn people that organize political violence, I don't know what business you have in elected office. And I think this is really just this should be obvious to every good American of goodwill.
Well, Spencer, that's going to be the final word for today. And actually, you just reminded me that today is actually the 1 year anniversary, the 1 month anniversary of Charlie's assassination. So we clearly have a lot of work to do. Shermichael, I would just say when you're at the commissary at CNN this week, just make sure nobody puts anything in your water. Spencer, you should be just fine over there. Don't worry.
You
guys,
never know.
have a great weekend. You're welcome back anytime. No post-game show on
Dave.
Fridays.
Good to see you,
Thanks
Spencer.
a lot.
Thanks,
Great
guys.
to see you guys.